right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy Show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the SureDog Radio Network. I am your host, Keith Shillan. With me, as always, is the Duffy to the Shillan and Duffy Show. He is the senior editor of SureDog.com. He is the great Ben Duffy. Ben, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
Excellent. So, are you a little sad that we're closing up Fight Island?
It's been a fun experience. I mean, hell, we could talk for an hour and a half about that right now without even getting into these fights. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience.
So we had a big week of sports. MLB came back this week on Thursday. But even bigger was all the stuff that was going on in the world of MMA. On Thursday night, we had a Titan FC card. Friday, we had an LFA card. We had the return of Bellator on Friday, but nothing was bigger than the final card in Fight Island. This was Fight Island number 3, even though it was actually the 4th event there. I still don't understand that. It was a 15-fight card. If you didn't hear me correctly, that's 15, a 1, and a 5. There was 15 fights. There were 7 main card fights and 8 prelims. The card was headlined by the middleweight clash between former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker and former welterweight title challenger Darren Till. Let's get to the awards first. There was 6 award winners. They were, let's see, Tanner Bozer won one. Paul Craig, Fabricio Verdum, Jesse Runson, Tom Aspinall, and Kamazat Shimaev, who is the biggest talk of the town, and I still am struggling with his name. Let's get right to the action. In the main event, Robert Whittaker got a unanimous decision over Darren Till. Very calculated fight. Started off a little bit action-packed and really slowed down. Let's start with you. Ben, what jumped out to you about this fight?
Well, you said it. The first round, we looked like we were in for some fireworks. Both guys got a little more calculated after that. I think these were 2 fighters who both felt they were in a position where they could not afford to lose, especially not afford to lose spectacularly. And it played out that way. However, I mean, the big difference between this fight and, say, Adesanya versus Romero is that they weren't just standing there staring at each other. It was still a game of inches. They were making small adjustments throughout, and I feel as though the guy that made the better adjustments and played more into what his opponent was giving him rightfully won the fight.
Yeah. This fight looked like the Thriller in Manila compared to Adesanya Romero. Yeah, I feel like both guys felt each other's power early, and then neither guy was willing to take a punch to land a better punch. And under that strategy, I felt like it really swayed towards Robert Whittaker, where Darren Till was forced to counter-strike, and he's not, even though people call him, and I was listening to, I forgot what podcast I was listening to this week, and they pointed this out, and I was like, yeah, that's actually right. He's not a counter-striker. He's a pressure accurate, what am I looking for? Like a pressure outside striker, if that makes sense.
Yep.
He's got some serious power, even at middleweight. I mean, he dropped Whittaker in the first round. He hurt him again almost took him out in the 4th round. The thing that I kept saying when I watched this fight was, like, throw a combo, because what happened was Robert Whittaker started getting in, like, okay, I can blitz the pocket, and he's going to respond with one strike. So avoid that one strike, and I'm going to win that exchange. Now, every once in a while, he didn't avoid that one strike. And when he got clipped, he got clipped. I mean, the first round when he came in, he got dropped again in the 4th round. But overall, I feel like when they slowed down the pace, Darren Till really started playing Whittaker's game and just didn't have enough tools.
I agree, and I was kind of surprised because Till had a shiny new tool in his toolbox that we had not seen before. That intercepting elbow.
Yeah.
Like, my thought the first time he landed that, because the first time he landed it so quickly and dropped Whittaker so cleanly that I wasn't sure what it was. I was like, was that a punch or just his body was hiding it from me? Was it a clash of heads? And then they go to the replay. It's like, oh, it's just a little short elbow that he used to meet him right in the face. And my thought was, Whittaker's not going to be able to adjust to that. He's going to run into that about 3 times and he's going to get knocked out. And he did land it again later, but Whittaker did a good job of not just running right into that elbow that Till was very prepared to meet him with.
Yeah, I kind of wish that he'd followed up with more shots because he had a chance, especially in the 4th round. I think he actually surprised himself when he landed it, and he was like a little slow with the counter. But to me, I just was like, man, if you turn up the gas, he's going to win. And if you think back, he had a similar fight to this when he faced Stephen Thompson. He ended up getting the nod in that one, and I don't know if he felt the same way in this one. I scored it 48-47. I know there were some people who did score it for Till. How did you score it? I'm sorry. I said 48-47 Whittaker. I didn't say who. I scored 48-47 for Whittaker.
I actually gave it to Whittaker 49-46. I gave him the 2nd through 5th rounds. But the last 3 rounds were all pretty hard rounds to score. You know, I said, kind of doing the Twitter play-by-play, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a split decision coming because there are at least 3 rounds here that could easily have gone either way.
All right. Sorry, you said you gave him the last 4 rounds.
Yes, okay, I gave Till the first round, and I gave Whittaker the last 4.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it. The only round that we were different on, I gave the 4th round to Till. I understand Whittaker landed more shots, especially with the leg kicks. But I thought in that round is when Till hurt Whittaker, and it was like the most significant moment of that round. So that's why I gave it to Till. But I felt like there was some questions answered, but I feel that more questions were answered about Till than about Whittaker. One narrative that headed into this and why Whittaker wasn't as big a favorite as I think a lot of. Let me just tell you real quick. Back up a little bit. MMA decisions. It was pretty split. I mean, we got 10 people who scored it for Robert Whittaker. We had 10, right? So 10-10. It was 10-10 on MMA decisions. I normally send in my scorecard. I was actually at a 60th birthday party, so I didn't watch live, so that's why I didn't send mine in. So I will be the tying vote, as I know it, and I would have gave it to Whittaker, so it would have been 11 for Whittaker and 10 for Till. So it's as close as they come. Now the question is, those who gave a 3rd round to Till, which one do you think it would have been?
Maybe the 3rd.
Maybe that's the one I was thinking of.
Because the 3rd and 4th were the 2 hardest to score. The 5th, I felt pretty strongly that Whittaker had taken that one, but again, just they were so low output that, you know, like you say about the 4th, and I'm in the minority there. It looks like most people gave Till the 4th. He definitely landed the hardest shot of the round, and the rest of it was a lot of, you know, little stuff that Whittaker was landing, you know, still leaning on the leg kicks. You know, I just feel as though Whittaker won about 4 minutes of that round.
Sure. But
Till did enough in the other part of it that I have no problem with giving him that round.
Yeah, I felt that it was like a basketball game where I don't know what the 15-minute quarter, and like Till Whittaker was up by 5 points for 14 minutes, and then Till dropped like 10 points in the last minute and wins that game. Like that's how I kind of feel about the 4th round. So going back and back to I think you're right. Probably the 3rd round, because the 3rd round to me was the least memorable round. Like there's nothing that stands out to me in that round, and that might be why someone would give it to Till, as neither guy really stepped on the gas. Back to the questions about this fight, about the fighters. Robert Whittaker, there was a lot of people thinking like maybe he lost a step between. I mean, he just got absolutely destroyed by Adesanya. You talk about the 2 wars before that with Yoel Romero. He had to pull out of several fights with injuries, weight cutting issues, body failing him. I mean, think about the Gastelum fight where he had to pull out. He had to pull out of, I think it was a second Romero fight, and that's when was it Rockhold replaced him. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff. He was scheduled with somebody else where he pulled out, and it was like personal stuff on it. I know there's a lot of questions about Robert Whittaker, and I don't know if they were really answered. Like I feel like a lot of people thought like he might be done, and which is kind of crazy when you think he's like 29. But
Yep.
I would say it's like he's not done, but he may have lost something.
The questions about his health, really only time will tell. He looked physically fine against Till tonight, but it's always been inconsistent. As you pointed out, he actually pulled out of more title defenses than he fought in, which is not a good look for a guy who was like 27 at the time.
No.
So that question wasn't answered and really can't be answered except by continuing to watch him. I think a few questions were answered. It sounds cheesy and metaphysical, but for a guy who openly said that he was feeling burnout and just felt like he was losing his love of it, to watch a guy who was clearly having fun throughout fight week, was having fun on the night of the fight, and was, in a good mood afterwards is a good sign. They were interviewing him afterwards. They're trying to get him to call somebody out or plot his route back to a title shot. And he kind of just gently said, no, I'm just going to go enjoy this with my family.
Yeah.
If this is a sign that he is finding some kind of, work-life balance, then assuming his body holds up, his best days may still be ahead of him for all we know.
Yeah.
The other question is, Adesanya destroyed him. And Adesanya might always have the striking advantage if they fight again, or if they have a trilogy or whatever.
Sure.
But in their first fight, he was incapable of making any adjustments. Within a minute and a half, you knew that Adesanya was going to be able to blister him over that lead left hook. And everybody in the arena, except apparently Whittaker, saw it. And, Adesanya just lanced him with the right over that. I don't know how many times before he just fell over dead. The fact that he was pretty smart this fight, made some small adjustments that does tell me good things. And the fact that he still got a bit of a chin on him.
Yeah. I felt like there was a little bit of like ring rust was coming off in that first round, because the first round was the one that he looked slow. He looked a little slow. That's the one when I was started shake. So I already knew the results. I always tried to avoid the results, but it just doesn't happen. And then I just I'm curious, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't watch it till like this afternoon on Sunday, and I was just like, oh, dude, just find out what happened. And then I look, and then I'd watch it afterwards. I already know the results, and that was the one I was like, wow, I would have been a lot more nervous if I didn't know the results, because he looked flat. But then he started making adjustments. He started feeling more comfortable, finding his range, and he started playing that all the way in, all the way out game, all the way in, all the out game, and it worked out really well for him. So let me ask you this question. You said a lot of the questions about Robert Whittaker still need to be answered. So let me ask you this question. Israel Adesanya is the best middleweight in the world.
Yep.
Is Robert Whittaker still the second best?
I think he is. There are a couple of other interesting guys there, but they have more to prove.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Whittaker, nobody has shown that they're better than Whittaker except Adesanya.
Yeah. I think I'm thinking about now this X's and O's between Apollo Costa and Robert Whittaker, and I'm like, how could that not be like the most incredible fight? The Whittaker has so many more tools, but Costa just has that explosion power. Like, how fun would that fight be?
It would be fun. It would be like a younger, healthier Romero, with more tools on the feet coming at Whittaker. So
yeah, I don't know if he's as explosive as Romero, but yeah, I don't think that's possible. Maybe Superman is,
No.
But let's talk about Till, because while Till lost, and I actually thought he fought kind of dumb, and I felt like he was right there to get this fight and kind of let it slip away. With the right coach, with the a little more years of experience, I feel like he wins this fight. With that said, I feel I'm more confident in Darren Till now than I was before the fight when he lost, and I feel like this narrative was been said about Darren Till where when he first came on the scene and he was blitzing through guys, knocking out Donald Cerrone easily, I felt like Darren Till was overrated in the sense, and I hate using overrated, underrated. I don't think you've ever heard me really say that on here, but to the point where people thought he was going to take out Tyron Woodley. He was like, there was so much buzz about him. He was going to be the next big thing. He was going to be the next McGregor. He was going to be the McGregor of England and all this. And then he got absolutely wiped out by Tyron Woodley, follows that up, gets knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, and then I feel like he goes the opposite extreme where he's overrated. Remember he went against he went up to middleweight. A lot of people think that wasn't the best move because, what's the thing about Darren Till? His best skill is that he's bigger than everybody. He's stronger than everybody. Then he goes to the middleweight. Well, he's not going to be bigger and stronger than everybody, which he actually still is, believe it or not. I mean, he's way bigger than Rob Whittaker, which is a small middleweight, and he's a former welterweight himself. But, he goes against Calvin Gastelum, and he's a huge underdog. Nobody's taking Darren Till to win, and then he beats them, and the narrative – and it wasn't a really exciting fight, but the narrative is not – wow, what a great win by Darren Till. It's more like, oh, that's Kelvin Gastelum. He gets unmotivated. He probably looked past him. Then Gastelum gets beat. Hermanson adds to that narrative even more. And then he goes against Rob Whittaker, loses, but is competitive enough. There's I think everyone's like, no, Darren Till's he's a contender in middleweight. I feel like that question has been answered.
Yes.
So, let's do some matchmaking before we're on. You want to start with Till or you want to start with Whittaker?
Oh man, let's take a look at Till. I mean, just because he's new to the division and there are plenty of guys he hasn't fought yet.
Yeah, so he's 1-1 at middleweight. Got a win over Gastelum, a loss to Whittaker. I'm going to throw out a fight that I don't think many people agree with him. I would, if I'm the UFC, I would want to get a win for Darren Till. I've seen a lot of people throw out the winner of Yoel Romero versus Uriah Hall. He could beat those guys, and he very well could lose to them. I want to get him a win. So I match him up against the winner of Amari Akhmedov and Chris Weidman, and hope Chris Weidman gets that win, that you could have a main event fight night between Darren Till and Chris Weidman. That's my matchup. What's your matchup?
I'm totally fine with that. I see the need to get him a win because – for all we know, he might be one of the 5 best middleweights in the world right now. I don't know if I think that. I don't know if that's my actual opinion, but you could certainly make a case for it, given who he's beaten and what the results have been. He's fought 2 top 5 middleweights, and he was at least very competitive in both cases. If you want to just say, okay, let's treat this guy like a top 5 middleweight, give him Jack Hermanson. Hermanson just barely beat Gastelum, and the winner of that is, right up there for a title shot. I would also be fine with tapping the brakes a little bit. This guy's only 27 years old. There's a very good chance that he has not reached his apex in terms of his skills or his mental game. So there's no reason to fast track him to a title shot in a second division, before he's even 28 years old. Give him the winner of Weidman versus Akhmedov. And obviously from a marketing perspective, it would be much, much better if it were Weidman. But yeah, that's not an insultingly low matchup, but it's giving him a chance to kind of regroup and maybe get some reps in against someone that's not at the absolute tippy top.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put a pin on why I wouldn't match him against Hermanson. You'll find out in about a second. I'm sure you can figure out what I'm going to say. But besides the champion Izzy Adesanya, Darren Till is probably the most marketable guy in that division. Which is why, if I'm the UFC, I'm trying to give him favorable matches. I'm hoping he goes on a 2 or 3 fight winning streak. I hope he gets a couple of knockouts during that winning streak, and then hope Adesanya is still the champion. Because how marketable would be Israel Adesanya and Darren Till, both guys who like to talk trash, both guys who like not only talk trash but Photoshop people and making memes. How fun would that be for a pay-per-view? All right, let's move over to Robert Whittaker. I know there's a very small population that are calling for a title shot. I don't think he offered this performance he should go, especially after. It wasn't like he had a war against. It wasn't Kelvin Gastelum against Adesanya. He got blown out. So I'm leaning toward the Jack Hermanson fight. That's the fight that Jack Hermanson said he wanted. I feel like it's Costa, probably Cannonier, and then the winner of that fight. That would give you enough time if Adesanya is still champion, then Till maybe is back in it. What would you do?
I am absolutely fine with the Hermanson fight. Given the way that the first Adesanya versus Whittaker fight went, each of those guys needs at least 2 fights, maybe 3 fights before there's any interest at all. Whittaker, as I kind of said earlier, answered some questions on Saturday, but one question he did not answer is, how are you going to beat Israel Adesanya if you fight again tomorrow? No. And luckily, there are plenty of guys lining up for a title shot. There's not this just drought of title contenders where they're going to have to stick the same guy right back in there. So yeah, give him time. I am fine with the Hermanson fight. That'd be a great fight. Two very contrasting styles. Two guys that have been winning a lot recently.
Yeah, the thing that would jump out to me if I was cornering Whittaker and I was asked, how do you beat Adesanya? I said, well, you got to turn into a wrestler. You got to get those wrestling. But let's be honest, Robert Whittaker is a much better defensive wrestler. He's an anti-wrestler. He's not a really offensive wrestler. I mean, he's a middleweight version of Jose Aldo, as nice as I can be to as a comparison. It's not the perfect comparison, but you get what I'm saying. Like that, he's an anti-wrestler. Let's move on. Normally we spend much longer on the main event we do, but we got 14 other fights to do. So let's get to a fight that, to me, was great and terrible at the same time, and that was the co-main event. Much more entertaining than I think anybody expected, and that was the trilogy fight with Mauricio Shogun Rua taking on Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, Little Nog. Shogun is now up 3-0 as he got a split decision. This is the second time he won a split decision over Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. So I'm just going to say this. I'm really mad about this fight, and I'll tell you for many reasons. Number one, I was the only person on Sherdog to pick Little Nog, so that made me mad.
Yep.
But what made me even more mad is I thought Little Nog won. I scored the first 2 rounds for Nog. I thought he landed the better shots. I thought, it wasn't one of those, I felt comfortable at it. I was like, wow, cool. I'm going to get the Big Cojones Award. This is my chance to kind of make a comeback on the guys who's ahead of me. And instead, I fall even further back, so I'm upset about that. But the other thing that makes me mad is they've done a trilogy, and out of the 3 fights, I think Nogueira's won at least 2 of them. and he's got none to show for him. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I called this on Twitter right after the fight ended the closest lopsided rivalry ever. Because on paper, one guy won all 3 times, but as you say, these were razor close fights. Even the unanimous decision, these were close fights. These are extremely closely matched fighters with 2 very different striking styles, but nonetheless, they've always been able to touch each other.
Yeah.
Give it up for the closest lopsided rivalry ever.
Yeah. I feel it just to me this. So we kind of buried the lead. This was it was announced before the fight, and he doubled down on it afterwards. This is Antonio Rogerio Nogueira's last fight of his career. To me, this just sums up his career. Like a guy that he's ending his career with no crowd on a loss that was so close, which makes me even more upset because this is he deserved to win. End his career with a win, but it's not in Brazil. He doesn't get the standing ovation by the crowd. He doesn't get the Joe Rogan, you're a legend, we'll miss you, we'll always love you, it's an honor to see. He didn't get any of that. He didn't get any of that. I mean, Fabricio Verdum had a longer post-fight interview than he did. He got none of that, and that's always been Little Nog. He's always was in the shadow of his brother. He was never the champion, but just outside. That's why I feel like nothing was perfect for him, ever, his whole career. And I just feel bad about that.
So do I. He's just always been one of the most likable fighters in the sport, and really just the very, very best of that second tier that were never quite the champ. He was one of the top 3 light heavyweights in the world for 5 years, from kind of his first little run in Pride. The people he beat, Overeem twice, Guy Mesger, Dan Henderson, Tito,
Rashad.
An incredible resume on the guy, and just never quite broke through like his twin brother did. Yeah.
But I've always felt like this, and I you'll never hear me talk bad about Big Nog because I'm the biggest Big Nog fan ever, but I feel like Big Nog was at the right place at the right time. And not saying he isn't super skilled, not saying he's not a top 10, 15 fighter ever, because he is, but he was also at the right place at the right time. Nogueira didn't have that luxury. He was in the light heavyweight division in the glory days when you had Vanderlei Silva in his prime, Shogun in his prime, Quentin Jackson in his prime, Ricardo Arona, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, like Tito Ortiz, Vitor Belfort, Alistair Overeem was fighting a freaking light heavyweight at the time, and then got more guy. There's like it was the glamour division of MMA for a long time, and that's why he kind of gets buried. Well, Nogueira, he had to beat Mark freaking Coleman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how he got his title. He beat Mark Coleman.
When you said right place, right time, I'm glad that you meant right place in terms of weight class, because it does make a huge it makes a huge difference.
And I mean, if you want to talk about Nogueira's replacement in the all-time ranks, I mean, he's top 5 at heavyweight, top 3. I mean, who knows? We'll put him where you want, but he's definitely up there. So let me ask you this question. So I'm just gonna bury Shogun on this because he's not retiring. Nothing was answered. We both know he's way past his prime. Neither one of us are excited to see him fight again. Right? I'm right? Like, where you agree with me with this?
I've got words about Shogun, but I'd rather bury him for now. Let's talk about
do it, because I want to talk about Little Nigga. Go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I'm gonna say is, for a guy who is beyond physically shot, he has done an incredible job at reinventing his game. I mean, 2 years ago, he was still a top 15 light heavyweight, and he's still within spitting distance of it now.
How crazy is that? You could make an argument. You could make an argument for him to be in our rankings.
You could. I mean, you could split his career in half. Like, when he came into the UFC and he lost to Forrest Griffin in his first fight, and a lot of people, myself included, said, okay, that's it. He's washed. Like, those knees are never going to be okay. His game is not going to translate. For a guy that's on his 5th left knee and his 3rd right knee, he's done. He's washed. You could take only what he has done since that fight, and he might still be one of the 10 greatest light heavyweights of all time.
Yeah, he
could literally cut out the best part of his career. Like, the guy has been one of the top 10 light heavyweights of all time twice.
Yeah,
it is insane.
I know. That's
a
great point. That's a great point.
Huge props to Shogun. But no, this is the night to talk about Antonio Rogério Nogueira, the man that's always been in the shadows.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add about Shogun, I feel like this run by Shogun, I mean, he's won 5 out of his last 6. Not counting the draw. So out of his last 7 appearances, he's lost once with a draw against Paul Craig. It has an Andre Arlovski feel to me, where Andre Arlovski kind of had this resurrection, but everyone's like, really? Like, he's protecting his chin better, but he's not good. Like, that's how I feel about Shogun. Like he's had the right matchups too. His toughest fight was freaking Paul Craig and Anthony Smith, who's not that good either. But let's ask you about this. I'll say this, and then you tell me how Nogueira remember it. Now, I think Nogueira is a legend. I think he's super talented. We already talked about just being a part of the deepest division. If he was a middleweight, he probably would have been the champion. But being that he fought in the UFC, he won't be totally forgotten. But I feel like he's going to have a Igor Vovchanchyn, Ricardo Arona type. Oh my God, remember that guy? Like, I just feel like that's what's going to happen to Nogueira. Like 10 years from now, no one's going to be mentioning Nogueira. Like no one mentions Ricardo Arona anymore.
I kind of agree. He's in a tough spot because by the time he got to the UFC, he was a little past his prime physically. He'd had a couple of bad losses. So the real glory days of his career took place outside of the view of the average fan today. And while he had a very good UFC run, he's going to be more remembered for the low points of it. He's going to be remembered for just getting starched by Anthony Johnson. Unfortunately, most of his UFC highlight reel is other people's highlight reels.
Yeah. He's part of Sokoju's highlight reel. One of the biggest upsets ever. Remember Sokoju? I
believe it's the biggest upset ever, odds-wise, in a major promotion.
I think you're right. I think it was over the Holly Holm one. Yeah, it's too bad. It's funny because if you think about the guys he's beaten and you compare it to like Tito Ortiz, he's beaten better guys than Tito has. But Tito had 5-6 title defenses against guys that Nogueira would have also beaten Evan Tanner and Yuki Kato and Elvis Sinasek and who am I forgetting? Vladimir Mashenko. He actually he split with Vladimir Mashenko. But this is the Tito's run, and Nogueira has better wins than that.
And the thing is, it's not even a matter of era because he was getting better wins at the time. Yeah. At the time Tito was champ, Nog was over there in Japan beating Alistair Overeem.
Yeah.
Kazushi Sakuraba, Dan Henderson. So I agree. Thing about Nog is it's unfair, but there's such a difference in how you're remembered if you won a title in the UFC. No matter how undeserved it was, no matter whether you defended it 10 times or you didn't even defend it once, think of how differently we think of Michael Bisping.
Absolutely.
How would we be talking about Michael Bisping now if he hadn't won a belt? We'd be like, he's one of the best of the rest. Yeah. Maybe he'll make it to the UFC Hall of Fame sometime just because he was so important in opening the doors to British talent to start coming into the UFC. But he was never that good.
If Michael Bisping never won the title and didn't do the commentating afterwards, he would have been forgotten.
Well, and
we'd be
where
Koscheck is.
We'd be thinking about him like Dan Hardy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he does a lot of commentary. He's pretty good on the X's and O's. They always bring him in for European cards.
Yeah.
I'm
saying if he didn't do the commentating, we'd really.
If he didn't, yeah,
he'd be like a Josh Koscheck. Like, I had out with John Fitch. Like, yeah, nice run. Like
more like Koscheck because they're both kind of assholes.
But Bisping's the asshole that everyone's changed their opinion on. One minute everyone hated this, and they're like, no, actually, we kind of like him.
Dude, it's because of Rockhold.
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's just so many people hate Rockhold that he became the hero just by making Rockhold so mad.
I think when you commentate, though, it has it. Because remember, Chael Sonnen went from, hated heel to, lovable heel? He's just crazy Chael. But let's move on. Talking about a guy that it feels pretty safe to say will never hold the UFC title, but he's been really close, and that's Alexander Gustafsson made his UFC heavyweight debut or just his heavyweight debut in general, I believe, when he took on former heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum. It did not go well for Alexander Gustafsson as he was submitted in the very first round. Beautiful armbar. Verdum went for a takedown, was holding on to that single, was willing. He was holding on, and he took a gamble because he left his face there trying to get that single. Gustafsson hit his face with about 40 hammer fists and was unable. He was able to get the takedown before he went out unconscious. And once he got the takedown, he took his back, changed to an armbar. It was so slick. Man, who do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about Verdum or you want to talk about Gustafsson?
Let's talk about Verdum really quick.
Okay.
The thing is, Verdum was a substantial underdog going into this, in spite of the fact that he was taking on a guy moving up to heavyweight for the first time who was not as good a light heavyweight as Verdum had been a heavyweight.
That's a good point.
And he was, I think something like a plus 200 underdog, mostly because he looked so dismal against Oleinik.
Yeah.
He just looked so listless, and that was his first fight back from a 2-year USADA suspension. So we were like, okay, he's 42. Conditioning has always been an iffy thing for him. Maybe he's just done. Maybe he's going to cash a couple more checks.
Motivation has always been a thing. People were questioning him motivation when he was the champion. How well was he taking it serious?
But here's the thing about Verdum. There's a huge variance in between good Verdum and bad Verdum. You can tell when he shows up 261 pounds, looking all fat, joking around, and just gets blown out of his sneakers, versus when he shows up 240, 242, got a little mini six-pack. And the thing is, the only difference is in his striking. Whether he's going to be the guy that just calmly boxes up Cain Velasquez or throws a flying knee at Mark Hunt, or he's the guy that dies from a shovel uppercut from Alexander Volkov, or just stands in front of Arlovsky or Overeem for 15 minutes without doing anything. Yeah. The difference between good and bad Verdum is the striking. His ground game is always on point, and it's a treat to see because we haven't seen it in the UFC very much. He's very much fallen in love with his Muay Thai, but man, once they hit the ground, the agility, the speed, just the proprioception, just knowing where your body is in relation to the other guy's body. I mean, he could have finished that blindfolded once they hit the ground. Yeah. And in a sport where we throw around the term world class too often and too easily, just to see the greatest heavyweight grappler ever to do MMA do his thing one more time was worth the price of admission.
Yeah. So we talked about how Nogueira we remembered. Fabricio Verdum, I feel, is like beloved by the hardcores. Like the hardcores know how good he has been, and we rank him accordingly. Where we say, yeah, this is a top 5 heavyweight of all time. Maybe top 5 might not be high enough. And to casual fans, he's kind of forgotten. He doesn't get brought up. And I mean, you're talking about a guy who's probably top 20 fighter, regardless of weight class. He looked good. You talked about the weight class. I think he weighed in. I think it was like 1 pound. What was it? 2 pounds lighter than this last fight. But he looked different. Like he looked better. Mm-hmm. Like it was. He added. You could tell he had a little bit of muscle. He slimmed down. Gustafsson. I'm actually going to give him a pass because I mean, you could be the best heavyweight in the world, and if you go on that, you hit the ground with Verdum, this is going to happen to you.
Yep.
So I'm going to give him a pass. That said, he's now lost 3 fights in a row. What do you take of Gustafsson?
I want to save a little of this for when we get to the Bulls and the Bears, but I will just say that the questions I had about Gustafsson have in no way been answered, and some other questions have now popped up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's do some matchmaking for a second. So Verdum, this was his last fight in his contract. To me, it's all but written that he's going to Bellator. I mean, how could he? There's no way Scott Coker doesn't push to get Fabricio Verdum. Scott Coker loves. One, he loves older guys. He loves guys with names. He loves guys with history. I mean, he signed Fedor. He signed Matt Mitrione, Frank Mir. I mean, he loves those. Verdum fits right in there. And how is Fabricio Verdum? I forgot. Someone tweeted this out this week, and I retweeted it. It's like, how is Fabricio Verdum not Fedor's last match?
Except that if good Verdum shows up, he's going to kill Fedor, and maybe people don't want to see that. That's the thing is, like, even though Verdum he's going to turn 43 this week. He turns 43 on like Thursday or Friday. Good Verdum is the second best heavyweight in Bellator right now. I mean, he goes over there, he fights one guy, and he's in the cage with Ryan Bader. Yeah. It's not even time for a senior tour yet. He didn't have time for Czech Congo or Matt Mitrione. He's going to get fast tracked to a title shot if he goes to Bellator.
Absolutely, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think it's going to be Fedor, Bader, like back to back, like that, and that's how I would do it if I ran Bellator. And yeah, I would take Bader to win, but if it hits the ground, Verdum has a real legit shot.
Yep.
And it's funny how much we're changing our tone on a guy in just a couple weeks. Like we were digging the grave. We were talking about how sad it was to see him like that. I'm going to say something extremely controversial. I think good Verdum may have beat prime Fedor anyways. I mean, the question is, was Fedor prime when he did beat him?
Well, if you're a Fedor apologist, then well,
I know. Yeah.
This is going to be a 3-hour show if you do this.
We can't do it. We can't do a Fedor one because this is a 15. We're on match 3 of 15.
But what I'll say is this: by the time Fedor lost to Verdum, everyone could tell he was ripe to lose at some point soon. You know, he'd gone the Tyson route. He'd just become a headhunter, wasn't using his ground and pound, was really only using his submissions to kill wounded prey. Everybody knew he was going to lose at some point in the near future. Just nobody thought Verdum was the guy because Verdum's only way to beat him basically was to tap him out off his back. And we were like, well, how in the hell would that happen? So I have to think that if they met in their primes, Fedor would have avoided situations where that could have happened to him. Because the guy did spend, upwards of 10 minutes in Big Nog's guard.
Well, I knew that you were going to say that, but Big Nog is not Verdum on the ground. He's not.
Big Nog is not the same submission threat, but he's a lot better at taking a punch in the face and continuing to try to win.
That is true.
That's the only
heart. You have his more.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Gustin. Let's do some matchmaking. I was going to say matchmake him at heavyweight and light heavyweight, but let's just pick whichever weight class you think he should stay. I will do heavyweight because I'm like, screw it. You've already had your run at light heavyweight. Just stay at heavyweight. I think Andre Arlovski would make sense. Like, it's a winnable fight for him. It's a name. It could be a co-main event of Fight Night. Who would you like to see Gustafsson? If he decides to keep fighting, who would you like to see him against?
That would be fine. Ben Rothwell would be fine. Some guy that is, a little out of his prime, and current or former top 15-ish guy. Because you can't give him a chump. Assuming that Conor McGregor never comes back, you're looking at the biggest MMA star in Western Europe right now. You can't just give him a chump just because he lost a couple fights to top 10, if not top 5 guys. Yeah. So yeah, just give me a current or former 11 through 15 guy that's preferably coming off a loss.
Yeah, a guy like Tanner Bozer would make more sense competitively, but not when you're just like Andre Arlovski or Ben Roth. They make more sense, and it's like that ultimate test. You beat them, you beat Andre Arlovski. It does more for your career than beating Tanner Bozer, even though it really shouldn't.
Yeah,
but it also cements you like, oh no, he just lost to Andre Arlovski. He really is done.
Yep, there you go.
All right, let's move on. Really, I thought it was a pretty fun fight. Carlos Esparza gets a split decision win over Marina Rodriguez. Carlos Esparza, who I always like to say, like the most forgotten champion in UFC history, because I always forget until they say it on the broadcast. The original strawweight champion. This is your classic striker versus grappler. Rodriguez was much better on the feet. Esparza was much better on the ground. But Esparza, for some reason, wanted to keep giving Marina Rodriguez chances, and it was a lot closer fight than it should have been because, for some reason, in the first and second round, with about 20 to 30 seconds left, she decides to drop down on an ankle lock, which allows Marina Rodriguez to get on top and start punching her face in. Carlos Esparza has the quietest 4-fight winning streak in the UFC. But to me, this was a terrible performance. Even though she won, I thought it was a terrible performance in the fact that she had an area that she was so much better in that she went to and still barely squeaked out a win. And to me, Marina Rodriguez, while she is so fun on the feet, her wrestling is god-awful, and that is a big, big problem in this division.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big problem. I actually gave the fight to Rodriguez, but I'm fine with Esparza winning because if Rodriguez lost it, she gave it away. Esparza's now on a 3-fight winning streak where you can argue that she lost all 3 of the fights.
I think I said 4-fight. I'm sorry. It's a 3-fight winning streak. Sorry.
I think it was 3, but
I wrote down 4, but you're probably right. Either way, she's on a winning streak.
Yeah, okay, she's on a 4-fight winning streak. The last 3, Grasso, Watterson, and now Rodriguez, you can make the argument that she lost the fight.
Yeah. And actually, that Jandiroba fight was closer than people think. But honestly, of the 4 named, that might be her best win, for quality opponent.
Jandiroba, probably
they're all kind of equal, but
they're all kind of equal. She, by hook or by crook, has won 4 straight in the UFC. Man, is she going to get back to another title shot?
I'm going to say no because I feel, based on Rose Namajunas is next in line, they probably want Tatiana Suarez, we've already seen what happened when she fought Tatiana Suarez. Terrible stylistic matchup. She's next, and it leaves Esparza's calling for that Claudia Gadelha fight, which I think is smart because I think it is the right step. I mean, she arguably won that fight even though she lost. If you're trying to make a back run, and I don't think any of us has taken her to win the title, I would take Rose Namajunas even though she beat Rose. I would take Rose now. I would take Weili Zhang. But the other person on her run on the way up that I feel like she needs to avoid like the plague is a girl that absolutely destroyed her, and that's Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I still feel like that's a terrible stylistic matchup. She's that anti-wrestler that we talked about with Rob Whittaker. So I feel like the only way Esparza gets a title shot is if she wins a 5th fight against Claudia Gadelha and she's just right place, right spot, or they book Rose versus Weili and suddenly Rose gets hurt in training, everyone else is booked, and Carlos Esparza is like, I'm on a 4-fight winning streak. I'm a former champion.
And if Rose wins the title, she has an easier path back because she's fought her before, she's beat her before. Even though they're 2 very different fighters now, that's something easy to sell.
But honestly, the way Whaley sits on her punches, she might be a better stylistic matchup for Carla. Though I'm taking both over Carla, just for the record.
Oh, I think Whaley would put Carla through the wood chipper.
I do too, but I think Rose does too.
Now, yeah, I mean, what did Rose have, like 4 pro fights at the time they fought, something like that?
Yeah,
yeah.
You talk about a former Invicta champion. She was the girl who, when they put in the Ultimate Fighter, she was the girl to win. She was the favorite. I think she was the 1 seed. So let's move on. As long as you're okay, like you have nothing else to add, right?
Yep.
Okay, Let's move on. This is the fight we've all been waiting to talk about, and that is Paul Craig beating. And I butcher this guy's name. He's been in the UFC long enough. How do I say his first name?
Don't bother learning it, because he's on my cut list.
All right. Gazamarad Antigolov. Paul Craig wins fights the only way Paul Craig can, and that's by getting taken down, getting pushed against the cage, and then getting a triangle choke. Paul Craig he might be my favorite bad fighter in UFC history. Like, he's just fun. Like, something about the guy I like. And then I looked at him like, he's 5-4-1 in the UFC. He's been in the UFC 10 times, and he's won half his fights. How is that possible? He's not good.
Because people don't learn. You know, you get this huge 6'4", like, frankly rough-looking dude with a thick Scottish accent that paints his face up like William fucking Wallace from Braveheart, and you're like, oh man, this guy is just going to come out and pull an axe out of his trunks and decapitate the other guy, and you don't realize that his game is really he's basically like a Scottish big nog. He's going to like let you beat him up for 2.5 rounds and then tap you out off his back.
Yeah. So luckily this didn't go the 2.5 rounds for. What I loved about this is Antigulov gets triangled. I don't know if you remember this. He gets triangled, gets his head out, and then puts his head right back in and gets triangled. Not a good show. Paul Craig somehow is 5-4-1 in the UFC. If he ever gets in the Sherdog rankings, I think we just eliminate that. Like, he comes in at number 15. We just go, all right, guys, we're ranking 14 guys from now on in light heavyweight. No 15. Before that, we had Alex Oliveira versus Peter Sabata. Cowboy Oliveira picks up a unanimous decision. Oliveira looked great, in my opinion.
He looked great, but I mean, taking on Sabata, who was coming back for the first time in 2 years, I don't know how much of it is that he looked that good, or just it was too much of a dead target in the water for him to just tee off on. But either way, yeah, he looked great.
Yeah, so I'll tell you how I looked at this fight. So I thought Oliveira looked more controlled than he has in a really long time, and he showed good takedown defense early, and then his attacks to the body were really, really good. He hurt him. Once between hurting Sabata to the body and then stuffing his takedown, this is where I get to the bad part of Sabata. I felt like about 1 minute into the second round when Sabata went for like his third or fourth takedown attempt and came nowhere close to getting him, I just saw a guy die. Like, he just died. And then he was just fighting the rest of the fight to not get hurt. Because he's down 2 rounds to nothing. He doesn't press at all. He's throwing jabs from 10 miles away. He's throwing kicks from 10 miles away. And to me, he was a guy like, for my own pride, I'm going to go 15 minutes, but I've already lost.
Yeah.
I mean, was there anything else?
No, that was it. Like, the third round was really disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, like, to me, he knew the guy was better than him. He couldn't win, so tried to make it the decision. Before that, Kazmat, it's funny, I always make fun of Kyle. Like, I can't do Russian names. I do Brazilian names much better, and I should know this game because he's becoming a star. Kazmat Shimaev beat Reese McKee. He made history as he is the first fighter in UFC. Well, I mean, this is a little deceiving stat, but he's the first fighter to fight 2 fights on separate events, because we had the old one-night tournaments. But since the modern UFC, he won 2 fights within a 10-day stretch. He didn't just win these fights; he absolutely mauled. I use the word mauled because that's how we describe Khabib Nurmagomedov. and he just looks like the welterweight Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's Dagestanian. He has fought low-level fighters. I mean, John Phillips and Reese McKee is as low as it get. But I want to read you some stats. This fight, he landed 40 significant strikes. Reese McKee landed 0. The two fights combined, according to UFCstats.com, he landed 83 significant strikes to McKee and Phillips 1. Total strikes, according to UFCstats.com, 192 to 2. All right, I've seen people. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna rant for a second, if that's okay.
Please.
Because I saw people saying this is the most impressive two-fight, first two fights in UFC in history. No, it's not. Anderson Silva landed threw 20 punches at Chris Lieben, landed 19 of them, and then won the UFC title with a first round, turning Rich Franklin's nose into a roundabout. I know we call him roundabout. What do you guys? His a roundabout. I mean, it was terrible, and it was not better than Anderson. Anderson won the title. That said, It's still pretty freaking impressive. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox now. Chimaev is, out of the entire Fight Island, is he the biggest star out of Fight Island? Whose stock rose the highest? I should say, not the star, because Masvidal's still the star.
But he is certainly the guy who did his own stock the most favors over the course of the 4 weeks at Fight Island, because he went from a fighter that nobody outside of hardcore followers of European MMA even knew about, into somebody that was so impressive that the UFC did a 7-fight main card and a 15-fight card for the first time in a long, long time, just to shoehorn him in one more fight before they went back to the States and they wouldn't be sure if they could get him over there. So, I mean, when the UFC makes those kind of exceptions for you, you're a big deal. And it's not just a matter of right place, right time, because we had all kinds of people from Europe and from the former Soviet republics debut on these cards, and none of the others made the kind of splash he did. So it was a matter of opportunity and of him being the right guy at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, he's checked every boxes because, one, he sees the moment, the way he fought, he backed it up, and then his mic presence, I'll fight next week. They asked him, when do you want to fight again? He's like, I'll fight in an hour from now. Let me rest. If someone wants to pull out, I'll jump in right now. And, I kind of believed him. If suddenly, maybe not the next fight, but suddenly, let me look at the card. Say the main event. Say Robert Whittaker. Or Darren Till. Remember Darren Till's, he said before the Kelvin Gastelum fight that he almost didn't want to go out? If Darren Till had a mental breakdown and didn't want to go for the main event, Chimaev probably would have went out to the main event and fought Robert Whittaker. And and then he said he was asked about what do you like, welterweight or middleweight, because he fought 2 different weight classes. He says, I will beat Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya on the same night.
I will smash both. Yep.
This guy. I mean, you got Dylan Danis calling him out, and just because. No, but Dylan Danis always wants to steal someone's spotlight, which shows you this spotlight for him to steal. Drake Riggs wrote an article where he was ranking the 10 biggest stars to come out of basically whose stock rose, and he put Chimaev number 1. Peter Yan and Davison Figueiredo won UFC titles, so I'd probably still put them 1 and 2. But I'm probably wrong. I'm doing it just gotta being a purist by saying they won the title, you have to put that number 1. But who people are talking about, nobody's talking about Peter Yan 4 weeks later. No one's talking about Figueiredo a week later. People are talking about Chimaev. He's incredible. That's the main card. Let's buzz through these prelims as quick as we can because I think we're almost at an hour already. We're not going to buzz by this one. Francisco Trinaldo versus Jai Herbert. Herbert making his UFC debut. He was knocked out in the 3rd round by Francisco Trinaldo. There's a lot of things. I want to talk about the fight, and then we're going to talk about the second fight. I thought it was actually a pretty good performance by Herbert in his debut, even though he got knocked out. I feel I was impressed. Like, Trinaldo is the ultimate veteran. If you can think about a veteran, especially at lightweight, like Trinaldo's that guy. And I feel like if they fight a year from now, and obviously Trinaldo will be a year older, but if Herbert had an extra year of experience, he probably wins. Because when he was fighting out the outside, he was picking apart Trinaldo. But Trinaldo is so smart. He knew he needed, in my opinion, he needed to be in the pocket or closer. And about 2 minutes in, he goes, yeah, I'm going to do whatever I can. And he just had to rush in Herbert. And Herbert was he was using a lot of movement, but it wasn't lateral movement. And he was backing himself up the cage and getting right where Trinaldo needed, which was the pocket or even close to the clinch, getting taken down. But Herbert's a guy that I'm like, you know what? Trinaldo is a tough fight in the UFC for anybody. It is extremely tough in your UFC debut to get like Francisco Trinaldo, who has, I don't know, 25 UFC fights plus. You know, what do you take of both these fighters' performances?
This is another one that I was kind of thinking about for Bulls and Bears, so I'll go into it in a little more detail there. But Herbert looks like the real deal, and luckily he's going to get plenty more chances to prove it. That second round, a couple people gave that round to him 10-8. He was absolutely thrashing Trinaldo. It was a tall order for him. I mean, he's taking on, just so you know, a 21 fight veteran. That was his 22nd. Just the ultimate wily veteran, a physically strong as an ox, old man strength, lightweight. And he got caught. And, we can talk a little bit about that later. But in a loss, he did not do himself too much harm. Trinaldo, hey, man, he's 500 years old, and he is on a 3-fight win streak against good fighters.
Yeah. So the thing I wrote down, I wrote in my notes, like, Trinaldo is what he is. He'll never fight for a UFC title. He's always going to be that tier below the top tier. But if I wrote 40 years old, and he's still pretty freaking good. Like, he's just a good fighter. We're going to get to the big talking point about this fight in a second, but one thing Trinaldo said in the post-fight, that he missed weight. He made 160. He missed weight by 4 pounds. It's the first time in his career he's ever lost weight, and he said, like, basically, he said, at this point my time, like, cutting weight's getting harder in his age, which makes a lot of sense. And he said, I'm going to go up to 170, and I think that's a terrible idea. Because he's already a short guy where he has to get in, and now you're going to add extra 15 pounds. With guys, like, it's not a little short jump. 10-pound jump would be hard enough, but a 15-pound jump, to me, I think 170 is the best weight class in the UFC. Trinaldo is a bull, and I don't know if that will translate. I don't like the idea, but I kind of like his call-out. They asked him who he'd want to fight, and he goes, Mike Perry and Donald Cerrone. Like, I kind of like those. Like, I think they'd be kind of fun. Like, I think Trinaldo versus Perry would be a lot of fun, and I actually think that's a fight that Trinaldo would win at 170. Do you like the idea of Trinaldo fighting at 170?
No, I don't, and for the same reasons you do. Not only because he's not a huge lightweight in terms of stature, so it would be like a bargain bin version of RDA's experience at welterweight, where just he can't do the things that make him RDA against real live UFC quality welterweights. He can't bully them. In fact, his losses at 170 have been people doing RDA things to him, like taking him down and holding him down, squashing him against the cage. It'll be the same, only worse, if Trinaldo moves up. Good on him to call out Perry, because that's one of the few name guys that he could actually give a fight to, because Perry's not a huge welterweight. Right. You picture him in the cage with, like, Jeff Neal.
No.
Or so, you know what I mean? Like,
no.
It'd be one of those ones
Imagine
where my wife...
I mean, not that he's ever going to get that level. Imagine Usman.
Yeah. It would be one of those fights where my wife looks up at the TV and she's like, how are these guys even allowed to fight each other,
Yeah, so if what Mickey Gall was hitting Mike Perry with, Trinaldo put you out. Yep. Especially if going up to 170, he has more knockout power. Trinaldo put you out. I just feel like when you're 40 years old fighting at lightweight, and you got 20. You said 22 fights in the UFC. He's fought everybody. He's been an ultimate professional. Like, this is the first time he missed weight. I just feel like if I'm the UFC and I'm the matchmaker or something, I just go, we're not adding a new weight class. Like, we're not adding a title or anything. But yeah, all right. Ronaldo, you want to fight catchweights at 163? We're gonna make catchweight fights at 163. Like, you just want to be an upcoming fighter you want to prove you're good. Okay, beat Francisco Trinaldo at 163. Like, that's better than fighting a guy at 155 who's not that good.
Well, he's like the gate for people that want to move from one weight class to the other.
Maybe,
like,
sure.
if you want to drop the lightweight, you got to fight Trinaldo at 165 first.
Maybe, sure, yeah. Like, I'm okay with it. So let's talk about the. There was a second fight, and the second fight was between Herb Dean and Dan Hardy. Dan Hardy and Paul Felder was upset about Herb Dean twice on the night. We'll get to the second one, which was actually the first one later on. But in this one, Francisco Trinaldo knocks out Jai Herbert. He was out on his feet before he hit the ground. Trinaldo ran over, saw he was unconscious, stood over him, actually didn't punch him for a while, looked up at Herb Dean. Herb Dean was just standing there, and then he kind of, as gentleman as Trinaldo is, he really didn't hit him hard. He kind of was just giving okay, stop it. Paul Felder goes, come on, ref, and Dan Hardy screams as loud you can hear it, stop the fight. It is one of the worst late stoppages I've ever seen, and thankfully that it was Francisco Trinaldo. Another fighter would have been really bad for Herbert, because he was out it was 5 or 6 seconds before Herb Dean realized it. Are you with me that it's really bad?
I'm with you that it was a bad stoppage, bad late stoppage. Yep. Okay.
Herb Dean is one of the very few referees to get people to defend him. I didn't see anybody who defended the stoppage as in, no, it was right. Like, I didn't. I'm sure there was, but I'm saying people I respect. I'm sure there's idiots on Twitter, but I mean, like, people I respect. I didn't see Aaron Bronstetter. I didn't see Jay Petrie or Josh Gross, or I didn't see you saying, like, people I respect. Marcel tweeting that it was an okay stoppage, but I did see people defend Herb Dean. Like, he gets a pass because it's Herb Dean. He's been a good referee, and he's been around forever. And I think of Herb Dean, I always think about Frank Mir breaking Tim Sylvia's arm, and nobody else saw it. And everyone thought it was a bad stoppage. It was like, nope, it was a perfect stoppage. That said, Dan Hardy did the absolute right thing by being, and I get it, he's emotional, but I'm 100% on Dan Hardy's side in this.
Okay, I'm going to differ from you there.
Okay.
I listened to Herb Dean's little video message about it. That came out today, and I think Dean is dead right on this. He pointed out, once that fight is going on, there are two people that I should listen to about stopping a fight. There's the doctor, who knows the human body better than I do, and there is the fighter's corner that knows their man better than I do. For someone outside of those people to yell stop the fight, like, what if he thought that was the doctor? I think Hardy needed to stay in his lane. That was him stepping out of the role that he was there to play in a way that is frankly dangerous.
Yeah, but okay, so I'm gonna challenge this. I think it's the first time we've ever really disagreed. He's screaming stop the fight, but he's also screaming it as a commentator, which they would do all the time. So his reaction into the mic is still for TV. You know what I'm saying? And because if it's an empty stadium, he hears that. If it's a full, if that's at Boston Garden, the crowd's going crazy and he doesn't hear that. But there's also guys around the guy in the front row is going to be screaming stop the fight, stuff like that. So by saying you can't say stop the fight because only the referee can scream that, he's not. When the guy gets absolutely blasted, knocked out with 20,000, I don't know what arena is, 15,000 people in the arena, you're not going to hear Dr. Tom Smith screaming out, stop the fight, when 40,000 people are screaming when a guy gets knocked out. As far as corners don't stop the fight no matter what. I mean, Mark Montoya would you'd be putting the guy 6 feet in the ground, and you say, what are you talking? He's still in the fight. So we're gonna have to disagree on that one. I'm with Dan Hardy. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna set this up. We're gonna put it on pay-per-view. Me and Dan Hardy versus Herb Dean and Ben Duffy tag team match for this.
Deal. Sounds good.
Ben's like, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Ben's been training.
Yeah.
Before that, probably the only thing more surprising than Herb Dean's non-stoppage is Jesse Ronson getting a first-round submission win over Nicholas Dalby. This was Jesse Ronson's return to the UFC after 6 years. Very surprising. The only thing I'm going to say about this is I think Nicholas Dalby. So it was a late replacement fight. Nicholas Dalby's coming off a win over Alex Oliveira, who's a really good win, and I think he was feeling himself. And I think he looked back at Ronson, and he ran. He was walking through punches. He was kind of piecing up Ronson a little bit, and he just got careless and got knocked out. Not knocked out, it was knocked down, and then basically submitted. But it was from that. It was a club and sub. How did you see this fight?
Basically the same way as you. It was not a great look for Dalby, and that's a shame because low key, Dalby's story of the last couple of years is one of the cooler stories in the sport. It's never going to be, front page type news on your average site, much less, on ESPN or anything, just because he's never quite been a title level fighter. But the way that, he bounced out of the UFC, admittedly, had problems with drink, with motivation, with depression, and then the way he just fought his way back, had this insane bloodbath fight in Cage Warriors, which is the first fight I've ever heard of where it was stopped just because the fighting surface was unsafe because of so much blood. Made his way back to the
Mark
UFC.
Montoya would have stopped that.
Yeah, no. Give that man some more blood and let's get back in there.
Yeah.
And to win his return fight, it was a Cinderella story. It was a Hollywood type thing. This would be like, not a great look for him. He didn't fight his best. I agree with you that he probably underestimated Ronson a little bit, which is easy to do. You look at Ronson, you look at his fights, you look at his record, you look at his physique, stepping up to welterweight where he often fights at lightweight. Would be easy to overlook the guy, and he won in just exactly Ronson fashion. Club and sub is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit, you talked about the Cinderella story of Dalby. Well, Ronson doesn't have the same Cinderella story. It's still a Cinderella story for him. A guy who was out of the UFC for 6 years, came back, was a guy that went to the PFL, went 0-2 in the PFL. Like, he wasn't a guy that people were calling for. Like, he was right place, right time. I mean, it's Fight Island. We need somebody. Who can we get? And I don't know who Ronson's manager is, but I'm assuming Ronson's manager is someone who's connected, who can get him in the UFC. And this is why there's certain managers, if you're a fighter who's on the brink, sign with that manager because you're going to get in. I could be totally wrong.
And by this point, any fighter in the UK, they just had their eyes on the news ticker to see if anybody fell off, because that's been what they've used to fill anything. It's either a guy coming from Russia or a guy coming from England. Yeah,
no, I know. And if you're a local fighter of the region, like when UFC comes to town, if you're the local, obviously Yas Island is different, but if they're coming to Boston and you're a local guy, you need to have your manager calling Shelby every day, and you need to make yourself your own weight and ready to go, because a lot of guys are in the UFC because of that. Before that, speaking of the English fighter, Tom Aspinall made his UFC debut with a absolute...
I apologize. Ronson is Canadian. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway, Aspinall.
Oh, that shows you how much I paid attention to Jesse Ronson. I'm sure. Apologies to all our Canadian friends, Cole Shelton, Craig Allen, Aaron Bronstetter, James Lynch. They would have all corrected us because, hey, nobody has more pride than Canadians. Canadians have pride in their country. I know. Yep. I can say that because I'm married to a Canadian and my 3 children are half Canadian. And when I say married to Canadian, I don't mean somebody who was has Canadian heritage. Like, my wife was born and raised in Canada. She just became a citizen last year. There you go. That's my personal news for moving on. Not Canadian, English, Tom Aspinall knocked out Jake Collier in the first round. Aspinall just way faster than Collier, who looked terrible. I mean, he looked like he ate Jesse Ronson when he walked in the cage. It was beautiful. He did a step-in knee, followed it with a clean 1-2. Really, my nice addition to the heavyweight division. Aspinall looked good. Callier, a former middleweight who's now fighting not only is he fighting at heavyweight, he's tipping the scales. I think he weighed at like 263.
264, yep.
264. I was being nice and gave him a pound. He probably was weighed in at 263 at the back scale, and then like ate another hamburger on his way to the scale. He looked terrible. He needs to go back to light heavyweight.
Oh,
I don't know if he can.
That is not
like I don't know if he can, but he should.
I mean, I have to imagine he just saw John Vellante fight a couple weeks ago and said, "Hold my beer," and not a light beer, because wow, he made Vellante's move from 205 to heavyweight look like nothing.
It was pretty bad. What do you take about this fight?
It's hard to draw much of a read from it. We already knew that Aspinall was a good striker, had good hands. That was a great knee. I want to see the next thing from him. That's for sure. I'm glad to have him in the UFC. Yeah.
One of the fights that on the prelims was the one I was most excited about, and it really came through, in my opinion, was Mosfar Evloev beating Mike Grundy. Evloev wins by a unanimous decision. I think both guys are good. I'm excited to see both these guys going forward. Both guys are I feel like Evloev blends his striking and his wrestling really well, but Grundy doesn't, and he's a little behind in the striking, and that was the difference. But Grundy's a legit wrestler. To take Evloev down as many times as he did, but Grundy is a really good wrestler. Evloev is just a better scrambler, because he made it, like, even though you got the takedowns on him, he was throwing Granby rolls, he was doing sit-outs and switches, and he was hitting everything. It was absolutely fantastic if you're a fan of MMA. Evloev's well-rounded. Evloev is a former M1 Challenge champion. He's 3-0 in the UFC. Like, this is a guy that looks like a future top 15 guy. Are you with me or no?
I am more than with you. He looked fantastic. I agree with you on the scrambling. This was a clinic in the use of scrambling to nullify the other fighter's advantage in physical strength and technical wrestling, because Grundy, he had a great shot, especially before he got really tired in the third round. He was getting in on Evloev effortlessly, tossing him to the ground, and by the time Evloev's butt hit the ground, he was already hitting a roll or a switch, and he was gone.
Fantastic.
It must have been so frustrating for Grundy. It looked like somebody like trying to get a cat into a bathtub.
Yeah.
At one point, the booth said that Grundy was like 4 for 11 on his takedown attempts, and the thing is, he got Evloev down every single time.
Yeah.
It was just 7 of the times he couldn't put hands on him before Evloev was gone again.
Yeah.
Combine that with the fact that he was getting boxed up, especially later in the fight, again, as he started to slow a little bit. This was a sensational performance. I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously, he hasn't had a star turn like the way Khamzat Chimaev has, but he's the guy that impressed me the most. This was the most eye-opening performance of the night.
Yeah, and I actually think the reason why it wasn't as more dominant as it was, and that's because I just think Mike Grundy's really good too. I think they're both really good additions. Yeah, I hope they both get favorable match, more favorable matches, especially Mike Grundy in the future. Before that, another guy who's been on a roll, Tanner Boser, gets a I didn't write down the only fight that I didn't write down. He won by
punched him out in the second round.
Second round. Okay, I didn't know the round. He knocked him out in the second round. I think he might have broke his eye socket. This is the fight that got Herb Dean some heat. This is one that they first complained about. They thought it was really bad stoppage. I didn't think the stoppage was that bad. I mean, he definitely was done, but he was covering his face, and a lot of Tanner Bozier's punches was landing on the forearms. So I do think it was slightly late, but I don't think it was the terrible as they pretended it was.
And obviously, I'm not a referee, but it always feels harder to call when a fighter gets hit and he goes down not like dazed and half unconscious, but in pain.
Yeah.
Like he went down and you could tell that it was because he was in pain. So it's like, okay, is he just going to blink it out and be fine and I'm going to look like an asshole for putting my hands on him? Or is this over and he's going to be tapping the mat in a second?
Yeah. And how many times have you seen fighters get dropped like that in pain, cover up a couple seconds. They get punched in the forearms, and as soon as you stop it, that guy pops up and goes, "What do you mean, man? I was covering up. It was hitting my forearms." Like every time that happens. But yeah, I haven't seen the news. I wouldn't be surprised if Pessoa broke his orbital bone, because that had that reaction where he got hit with a shot and instantly like reached up to his eye in pain. The thing that stood out to me this one, and I don't know if you remember the size of these two. This looked like a heavyweight versus a light heavyweight. I mean, it's been made, a lot has been made of Tanner Boser fighting at light heavyweight. It's been brought up. He was a little bit of a dick to whoever. I don't remember who asked it. He was a little bit of a dick to one of the reporters who asked him. But that light heavyweight movement, his body, like he's got thinner. The stick and move, he was doing the stick and move game, that thing that kind of Robert Whittaker did at the end of his fight. But the difference was he was sticking and moving and then getting out, and Pessoa was like Till was hitting, Whittaker's arms or like grazing him with shots. Pessoa, like he was in out, and Pessoa was swinging at air. Like he was already back into position by the time Pessoa threw his counter punches. Really another good performance in my opinion, from Tanner Boser.
Absolutely. I can get with Boser being a little upset at people asking him about dropping to light heavyweight, just because a year ago he was weighing like 251. He's gotten down to like 235, clearly, doing hard work, doing good things for himself. And now people are like, hey, don't you want to drop another 30 pounds? Or drop another 10 and then like suck up, 20 pounds of water weight during fight week. I'd be mad too. He's like, let me enjoy this moment.
In all fairness, too, a lot of times reporters, especially post-fight, there's not too much you can really ask, and you're trying to get them to say something that you can tweet, something you can turn into an article. Like, I know I do this. I'm the king of getting them to say what I want them to say. Like, I do it all the time. Like, the way I say it is like, any blah, 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 blah. Any chance you want to call this guy out after I said, this guy said you were blah, 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 blah. Anyway, you want to respond to that? Or, so I get that they have to work with them. I mean, you don't be like, hey, talk us through your knockout, or, oh, that was a good punch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of times you're like, well, so I asked this guy, and then you always have to ask about what's next, but you don't want to be the guy who jumps right to what's next right away. You want to do ask him about that moment, because everyone else wants to know what's next. Like, that's what we do, but you don't want to be the first guy to bring it up. He did call out Maurice Green again. That's a fight that I think would be fun. Just make it happen. I like the fact that these two want to fight each other. Anything else you want to say about Tanner Boser?
No, not really. Just welcome to being a person of interest in the heavyweight division. It doesn't take much, and he is delivering. Yeah,
he might be top 15 right now. He really might be.
That's so scary.
Speaking of someone who might be top 15, this person might actually be a contender now, and that's Pannie Kianzad getting a unanimous decision over Betch Coher. So, all right, let's talk about the fight, and then we'll talk about what goes next. I thought it was a really good performance from Pannie Kianzad. What I loved about this fight, so she was so much faster, but to me, she was also, like, the first time I saw, high fight intelligence, fight IQ from her, because she fought at her range and she was winning from range, but she knew that Betch Coher, like Francisco Ronaldo, needs to crash the pocket and make it a dirty, grinding fight. So what she was doing, she was working at her range, and then she would initiate the pocket, crashing down the pocket, and she would initiate the clinch. So now we're fighting clinch with her on the offense, and she kept doing it, especially in the first two rounds. I thought it was a brilliant performance by Pannie Kianzad. What did you think of the fight?
No, you nailed it right on the head. If we talk about kind of the best phase of Betch Coher's career, and I'm using that term very loosely, it's when she was picking off all of Ronda Rousey's friends on her way to that title shot. So like when she beat Jessamine Duke and Shayna Baszler, those are two women who are much taller and rangier and longer than Coher is. And I mean, they're not chumps on the feet. They know how to defend themselves. And you put it right. She collapsed the pocket on him, got inside, was able to use her boxing. She's not a super hard hitter. She's not she's not a one hitter quitter type boxer, but she's capable of accumulating a lot of damage because in spite of, her kind of dumpy physique, she's well conditioned, and she's beaten people just by just wearing them down. But she is used to coming at people that are trying to stay away from her, like backing away, using the jab, circling out, trying to keep her from crushing the pocket. And you're right. Penny Kienza did exactly the opposite. She's like, if you come forward, I'm going to step forward. I'm going to hit you with something, and then I'm going to put my hands on you and get my kind of weird half clinch. And now what? You're welcome to try to box me, but I'm going to start kneeing you. I might take you down. It was a fantastic game plan.
Yeah. So Betchka, she has like two kind of followers. You have like the cult fans who love her because of like her quirkiness, and they think it's funny. And then you have the ones who hate her because of that, because she's a character. But one thing about Betchka Hare is she's not dumb. Like, she knows what she's good at, and unless you have this huge athletic superiority like Holly Holm does, you're not gonna, like, even in a loss, you're gonna have a fight against her. I mean, like, you think about she beat Jessica Ai. She beats Sajara Eubanks, who actually does have that huge length, but because of how just Betchka Hare is gonna make you fight her fight, that she can even win those against people who are more talented than her. She lost a split decision to Raquel Pennington, who actually is a dog like her and better, and she's still going to a split decision. I mean, other than like Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm, no one's really blown her out the water. I mean, even the Irene Aldana fight was a lot closer than people remember to the end. But Penny Kienza, this is one of the, that's what opened my eyes. Like, that's how I was like, wow, this is how good this performance was, because people don't make it look easy against Betch. So yeah, you can tell by my excitement about this that we'll be talking about Penny a little later. But let's talk about the bad thing about Penny, is that she's on a 2-fight winning streak, and the UFC's bantamweight division is so shallow. But you kind of have a two-part thing. Is one, it's so shallow, and then the champion has already smashed everybody, that like 1 or 2 more wins and she's fighting for the title. Like, she went from unranked to fighting for the title.
Yeah, she's getting really close. That's
yeah.
Oh man.
Like, I feel like the bantamweights should get like, okay, I'm gonna get as high as I can until they wait. If I win, I'm gonna get a title shot, then lose. Like okay, I can get as high as number 2, but then I'll lose now. And let Holly Holm get beat up again by Amanda Nunes. Right before that, we had Ramazan Ameev taking on UFC newcomer Nicholas Stoska. Ameev won by decision. Ameev is just a much better wrestler. I'll give Stoska some credit. In the first round, it looked like Ameev was going to just pop his head off, and it looked really painful, and Stoska fought through it. I felt like both guys kind of tired out, with the wrestling tired out Ameev, but it told out Stolza too, and then the rest of the fight got a little sloppy at the end. I don't really have much to take from this fight. It was just a fight.
Yeah, it was just a fight. I will say that Ramazan Ameev, it is an underrated skill to be able to win rounds when you and your opponent are both tired and dinged up. I mean, that can really be the difference between a good fighter and a top level fighter. So to see him this relatively early in his development, not piss away a fight that he was well on his way to winning, even that is an underratedly cool thing to see him do.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. Like, this is tough about being gassed, and it's about tiring and still winning. Yeah, that's a great point. And before that, we had Nathaniel Wood versus John Castaneda. I mean, this was an absolute mismatch. Wood just destroyed Castaneda. He won by decision. It was not close at all. Wood just had way more weapons. He really did a good job varying his attacks. He had the higher output. He did a really good slip and rip combo. And Castaneda was one of these guys. It's very surprising that he made it to the UFC, because like he came from over Combates, but he wasn't this guy who was like wrecking the scene up. And I mean, he lost 2 out of his last 3 fights before this one. Like, it was a little head scratcher. And then not only are you probably not a UFC level fighter, or if you are, you're very bottom level, then you take on Nathaniel Wood, who's good. one thing I always talk about, like to me, there's like two gatekeepers. Like everyone says gatekeeper, and to me, there's like two definitions. The first gatekeeper is like you beat this guy on the region, you're UFC level, and then there's like the gatekeeper to contendership. And I feel like Nathaniel Wood is that. You beat Nathaniel Wood, you're a contender. If you don't, you're not.
Well, I would say that, but I would say also that there is every likelihood that Wood himself is going to be in contention before too long. The guy is at this point 4-1 in the UFC. His one loss is to John Dodson, and he was more than holding his own in that fight until he got into a wild slugfest with Dodson. And the one thing that Dodson has always had, in spite of terrible game planning, terrible fight IQ, being inert a lot of the time, there was a time when he was almost the only guy in that weight range that had one punch knockout power.
Yeah.
He's still got it in his late 30s. So Wood made a mistake that, who knows, Nathaniel Wood 3 or 4 years from now maybe doesn't make that mistake. Yeah. Maybe he learns the Ramazan Amaev lesson and he's like, okay, we're both tired. This fight's getting a little sloppy, but I know how to lock it down in the third round and not do anything that's going to cost me the fight. So I think he is for real. He did exactly what he was supposed to a late replacement that is arguable borderline UFC material. You just wiped him uncontroversially and he survives and advances.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that's something we've talked about in the past. Is a lot of times when these guys get put in those matchups, you have nothing to gain, everything to lose, and no matter what you do, if you don't like absolute blast them in the first 30 seconds or something like that people are going to find negatives about it. It's the difference between look what Nathaniel Wood did when he was put in that position. Look at what Nicholas Dalby did when he was put in that position. He ended up losing. So, good on Nathaniel Wood to get the victory. Let's move on. So, guys, we covered all 15 fights. I didn't think it was possible. We did all 15 fights. I think we gave, for the most part, a little bit on every fight. We blasted through a couple quicker than we want to, but we did 15. Let's do the cut list. Do you have any nominations for the cut list? Let me back up. So just so you guys know, the way the cut list goes, we pick someone that we think should no longer be in the UFC. We don't want to focus on the negative, saying like they should be out. It's more of who should be made room for other people to come in. The way it works is someone's got to nominate. If we both agree, that person gets put on the Shillan and Duffy cut list.
I have just one. It is Gadzhimurad Antigulov. He started his career, I think, 12-0, got to the UFC, won his first 2 fights there. He has now lost 3 in a row, all 3 by stoppage, 2 of the 3 in the first round, and just hasn't had anything to offer in any of those fights. It's time to make room for someone else. Yeah, that's the only guy I had on my list. It's the weight class that he probably won't be cut because they need bodies. But, yeah, I mean, you get submitted by Paul Craig is bad, but when you get out of a submission and you fall right back in, I'm sorry, my man. You lost, like you said, you lost 3 in a row. I'm going to correct you, though. All 3 of his last fights were first-round stoppages. Oh. It was Kudalaba. Wow. Yeah, I wrote that down. Kudalaba, Olekchuk.
Olesejczuk and Craig. I don't know if you caught that. I was talking. I was trying to buy time as I pulled up the Fight Finder.
Sorry.
That's what I was doing. I was talking, trying to get it up in time. Yeah, he got beat all 3. Let's do the Bulls and the Bears. Let's do the Bulls first. Do you have any Bulls? And guys, sorry, let me back up again. Bulls and Bears, if you don't know what it is, it's basically like a lot of people do stock down, rising, falling. We just do Bulls and Bears. We call it, it's like a stock market reference. When the market's going good, it's a bull market. When it's going bad, it's a bear market. Do you have any Bulls or Bears?
I have Bulls. I have 3 Bulls.
So these are good things. These are good.
Yes, good things. I could just say generally Russian-born fighters, because 3 Russian-born undefeated fighters all won on Saturday. That would be Amaev, Evloev, and of course Kamaev, who is from Chechnya by way of Sweden. But sure. I'm going to hone in on Movsar Evloev. We've already covered the fight technically, so I'm just going to say, of the 3 performances, and even though Chimaev is clearly the star coming out of this, again, the most impressive individual performance was this one because it was against a better opponent, and it was just so consummate. He he had the perfect game plan, the perfect tactics to beat the guy that was in front of him. So that's my first bull.
Okay. And when you say first, like your top one, or you like?
That's my third. That's
okay,
my
right. So
lowest.
that's your third. All right. So you're number 2.
Number 2, Fabricio Verdum.
All
it
right.
had to have been insulting for him to go in against a man who was retiring, dejected in the octagon after getting choked out by Anthony Smith a year ago. It had to have been slightly insulting for Verdum. And good Verdum, bad Verdum, any Verdum on the ground is bad news. Turning 43, he still has something to offer the heavyweight division, whether it is in the UFC, Bellator, or even one championship, where there will be no USADA to dog his steps and darken his doorway. But there's never been a more appropriate use of the term bull or bear than for a star heavyweight who is at the end of his contract. He made a lot of money on Saturday.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't go to Ryzen, so he doesn't go against like a, his first fight in Rise would be against a 170-pound professional wrestler who never fought before,
or a 470-pound professional wrestler, or Satoshi Ishii. Yeah, not Rise.
But hey, let's give some credit, because last week I asked Ben to make a prediction who he was taking, and you took Fabricio Verdum, so let's give you some credit, my man.
I chickened out and picked Gustafsson on the actual pick'em, but I felt stupid about it in 2.5 minutes.
You know what, then? I take Nagara. I lost because of it. But I'm actually, if I'm on the fence for anyone, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to take second or third or fourth. I'm trying to win it. I don't care if I take second, it's like taking last. Nope. So I'm purposely trying to make up picks.
You're daring to be great.
And I'm going the complete opposite direction. I'm way out of the running now. And who's your number 1 bull?
Number 1, and there are many we could choose, and you're going to go in a different direction than me, but let me go ahead and give it to Robert Whittaker. It's weird to put a guy at the top of my bulls list that really just had a super close decision win over a lower ranked guy in his own division. That doesn't feel like a huge win, but for a guy with the kind of question marks hovering over his head that Robert Whittaker has had, just survive, advance, move on, and look like you're having fun is a huge win for all involved. The sport is better with him in it, and he's in it longer if he's having fun and winning fights.
Yeah, and it might be just a big weight off his shoulders. We might see a much different, once you have that pressure off of him, especially if people are doubting him in the future. He was the favorite, kind of similar to, not as big favorite Nathaniel Wood, but kind of the similar thing where a lot to lose, not too much to gain. I'll give you my my bulls. My number 3 bull, Penny Kianzad. She is now a contender, 2-fight winning streak. She looked good. It more has to do with her division, but Penny Kianzad. My number 2, listen, this guy is not going to be good in the UFC. He's not going to have a run, but the backstory: return to the UFC after a 6-year layoff, short notice, move up a weight class, get a first-round slot. Jesse Ronson, good for you, my man. You get the bull. But my number 1, and this is totally a cop-out, this is a 2-for-1. It is 2 fights in 10 days in the UFC. Sure, he was heavy favorite, by far heavy favorite. And that's Khamzat Chimaev. But the reason why he got it, not only did he go 2-0, he's getting star treatment, but 83 significant strikes to 1, 192 total strikes to 2 is incredible. So Chimaev is my bull. Let's go on to bears. I'll go first this time. My number 3 bear is the Davi Ramos team. I don't know if you caught, this is this new team that's on the scene. I think they're kind of still under Pedro Rizzo. I think there's some connection with Pedro. I'm not too sure. I'm not too up on the Brazilian teams too well. But Davi Ramos has been training with Pessoa and also training with Solci. Over the last 2 events, they are 0-3 in 2 weeks. So Davi Ramos team, and I apologize to what the official name of the team is, not doing too well. My number 2 is, I'm going to go with, and this is a 2-parter, I'm going to go with Alexander Gustafsson. The guy's lost 3 fights in a row in 2 different weight classes. He's kind of cemented himself as we talked about, Joseph Benavidez last week, as one of the best guys to never win a title. Even though let me back up a second. I don't think Gustafsson should be in that category. I think he gets a little overblown. I think he had 2-year stretch where he was pretty good. But you get my point is like a guy that gets brought in that conversation. But I'm going to add in the reason why I don't want to put this as one of my bears is because we did this a couple weeks ago. But that I'm adding into that light heavyweights moving up to heavyweight. They have not had success. You had Gustafsson, the same card. Jake Collier, he might be moving up to super heavyweight next. A couple weeks ago, I think it was a week ago, Maxim Grisham. Recently, we've seen John Vellante, Vince St. Preux. They have all lost. Light heavyweights moving up. Not everybody's Daniel Cormier. Not everyone's Randy Couture, guys. And my number one bear, and we're going to disagree about this, but my number one bear, Herb Dean, because he almost got Jai Herbert killed, and then he should have just took the silent treatment on Instagram. I think he lost that battle on Instagram too. Herb Dean is my biggest bear. Not a good weekend for Herb Dean. Who's your bears?
All right, my bears. Jai Herbert is one of them, and it's a little unfair. It's a bit of a no-win situation. I mean, he's coming in to take on a dangerous, underrated, and overweight Francisco Trinaldo, but he was a favorite in that fight for a reason, and just completely destroyed him in the second round. Going into the third, Masaranduba he's tired, he's beat up, he's got a huge cut under his eye. He really has one way to win that fight, and that's by landing a massive haymaker. For Herbert to know that and to walk into such a haymaker, you can't let him completely off the hook for that. He's going to have plenty more chances to prove he belongs in the UFC, but he has now gotten off on the wrong foot. And that's a shame, because he blew it.
In all fairness, he wasn't out, though.
Yeah.
He wasn't out. All right.
Number 2. Just let's keep beating up on him. Gaji Murad Antigulov. Here's the thing. He started his career 12-0. He won 10 straight.
I think hold on. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I don't think you're that low on him. I just think you've learned how to say his name, and you just want to keep you put the work in to say his name right, so you're going to get it. Like, I practice this hard, I'm going to get it.
Exactly.
There you go.
It's like I saved up my money to buy the Jordans, and I'm going to wear them damn every
I don't care if it's raining out, I'm still wearing them.
Here's the thing. If you take all 600 fighters in the UFC, Paul Craig is the one where you can most easily encapsulate what he does in one sentence. You can describe a lot of people's game in one sentence, but Paul Craig, he gets his ass kicked and then he taps you out off his back. That is Paul Craig. Antigulov knew going in that if he's going to beat you, that's how he's going to beat you. It's the only thing he has. So for him to fall into a triangle, extract himself from the triangle, manage to get back into the triangle, and be trying to punch him out from the top while Craig is cinching it up was just unbelievably stupid. I mean, I just talked about Herbert letting Trinaldo back in and letting him win pretty much the only way he had. This is 10 times that. Like, have you not watched the Paul Craig fight? What makes you think you're going to be able to punch him in the face hard enough to make him stop triangling you? Because trying after getting punched in the face is what he fucking does. Like, get out of the UFC.
You know what I've said for years, and I don't understand why fighters don't do this? And I don't want to be the guy at the bar who says, why don't they just do this? So if I sound like if I'm doing that, then please ignore what I'm saying. But I never understand when fighters are like in a triangle and they're on top. Why didn't they just go straight Tanya Evinger, Yana Kunitskaya, and like stand on their face and get out and go, yeah, I'll lose a point, but at least I'm not getting submitted anymore. Like if it's in that deep and you're about to submit. If you're about to submit, why not try it? You're about to give up and lose anyways. Why don't give up a point?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like dumbass at the bar, but this is common knowledge. This is how the sport works. I have been triangled. There are ways to defend it, and it wasn't a lightning quick triangle setup. He spent like 15 or 20 seconds like punching Craig in the face instead of defending the triangle.
It must be Paul Craig can just triangle Russians. Everyone else can get out of it except for Russians.
Yeah. And my favorite moment the whole night.
Russian kryptonite is Paul Craig. That's incredible.
My favorite moment of the night was right after the fight when, the camera's kind of panning around and people are going to their corners. Antigulov's corner was so mad at him. Like, you couldn't hear what they were saying and you wouldn't have been able to understand it anyway, but they looked like they were going to send him to bed without his dinner and take away his Xbox when they got back. Like, they were so mad, and can you blame them?
Are you trying to tell me that Russian cornermen are not the most sensitive to their fighters? Is that you're telling me? Because I can't believe that.
I think Greg Jackson would have slapped that dude. I mean, there's no corner supportive enough to.
Do you remember when we get way off track? We shouldn't be getting off track of the 15 fight, but remember I was there at live UFC 210 Anthony Johnson versus Daniel Cormier, and his corner walked out on him. It was
Henry Hooft.
Henry Hooft, yeah. They just walked out. They were so pissed that it was like the whole strategy was like, don't wrestle with Daniel Cormier, and he decides to wrestle. And they were so mad they just left him. He was giving his retirement speech, and they weren't even there.
Oh, that's sad.
All right. Did you have one more?
I've got one more. Alexander Gustafsson.
We're piling on the guy.
He had a clean slate. He had a new lease on life. Well, as clean a slate as you can have when you're one of the bigger stars in the UFC. I mean, the whole forward track of his career depended on what happened on Saturday night. And he just, for one thing, he was getting the worst of the striking for the little time it lasted. But just the fact that almost 43-year-old Fabricio Verdum was able to change levels, take him down, and then just, steamroll him like that on the ground, that's not a good look. At heavyweight, he never had a ton of power at light heavyweight. So already he's moving up to heavyweight as a guy, one of the few guys without serious knockout power. His calling card was going to need to be speed and superior footwork. So, yeah, this didn't show me anything that makes me excited to see him at heavyweight going forward. And really, it was on him to show us that he's not the guy that was like practically in tears and leaving his gloves in the octagon a year ago. Because if that was him and he's just back for a few paychecks now, heavyweight's not the place to do it. Verdum gave it to him about as gently as he's going to get it at heavyweight.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You don't want to mess around. I think the only thing worse than Alexander Gustafsson's performance is my performance in Pick'em between this and Bellator. I picked between the two, because listen, you can say a lot of things about me. I'm not scared to pick an underdog. Between Bellator main card and UFC, I picked 6 underdogs. I got 1 out of the 6. Thank you, Carlos Esparza, for getting a split decision, because I almost went 0 for 6 on him. I had a terrible week. Let's get your grade. What was your grade for this card?
I'll give this card a B+. Yeah. It moved pretty decently for a 15-fight card. It didn't feel like it took a million years. Yeah, there were a couple of eye-popping performances. The main event was kind of a slow burn. It was the least exciting Robert Whittaker fight at middleweight so far, which is not saying too much because the guy puts on great performances. But give that one a B+.
Yeah, I gave it a B, with B kind of being my ceiling, with having a lot of matchups that don't really intrigue me. I don't think a lot of people were too excited about Nathaniel Wood versus John Casteda and the great Paul Craig. There wasn't a lot to get excited about, especially from the ranking sense. So I think B was like the highest ceiling they can get, and I think it kind of did. We have another card this week. It was supposed to be Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana, and somehow I actually think we have a more exciting main event. We have Derek Brunson versus Edmund Shabazian. Do you have a prediction this early before that?
I'm not going to stick my neck out yet. This is a great matchup.
It is. It really is. It's a good test. It's a good test. All right, guys, we'll be back for that one. We have a bunch of loaded stuff for the network that'll be coming out this week. We're back full swing, so make sure you head over to SureDog.com for the radio network. Head over to Loudmouth MMA. You get all the stuff. Ben, anything closing you want to say?
I do have one prediction. I predict that Joanne Calderwood is going to regret taking Jennifer Maia as a stay busy fight.
Ooh, I think she just needs money. I really do. I think she needed money.
She's been open about it before, but this is going to get her money at the expense of the title shot she was going to get.
Yeah.
She's losing.
Yeah, but when she sees Jennifer Maia get absolutely destroyed by Valentina Shevchenko, she might not regret it.
There you go.
There you go, guys. We this is our biggest recap ever. We did 15 fights, and we believe it's the most comprehensive recap on the internet. Make sure, guys, I don't do this often, but make sure you subscribe, share, tell your friends about it. Tell them that all the other recaps suck and ours is the best. And don't say that. There's actually some really good ones out there. But guys, we'll be back next week. Talk to you guys later.